Welcome to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with Charles Coulombe.
As always.
Uh,
Yes, you're right. I should probably ask, do we know what this session is about? We forgot, didn't we? It's our anniversary. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. For a year, we have been doing these Off the Menus. That's right. So I want everyone to do a big group hug. That's right. You didn't get me anything, though, did you? Nah, never mind. Forget it. It's all right. No, we have been doing this a year. Can you imagine?
Time flies.
Gosh, I'll say. I didn't think it was going to be going on here, did you?
No.
Well, we're still here. Gosh, Obama was president when we started. Francis was Pope. He still is.
He still is.
Yeah, how was that? Gosh, but everything seems to have changed in some ways and not at all in others.
That's true.
But speaking of change, I understand, marking this first anniversary, you've got something to say.
Yeah, we have a couple of announcements. First is that Charles and I have decided to do the show on a weekly basis.
Sorry.
So every Monday we'll be releasing the full episode, and during the rest of the week we'll release the individual segments. So for all you diehard Charles fans out there, Monday is your day.
Wow. It'll soften the blow of having to go back to work, I hope.
Yeah. The second thing to announce is that we've reached a point where we can no longer take everyone's questions on the show. We've been getting about a dozen or so questions a week, and a lot of the people who send in are sending multiple questions.
Sure.
So we just simply can't fit everyone in anymore. But to remedy that, it's Charles and I are hoping that in the future, Charles will be able to do some live streaming through Facebook and or YouTube. So hopefully you guys can get in the questions in these venues.
It could easily degenerate into live screaming, though, so be careful. Live screaming? Oh, never mind. Go ahead. What else you got?
Okay. Those are the two announcements. So, okay.
Well, there you go. You see, ladies and gentlemen, life is change. And so, since we've been alive for a year as a show together, all of you and us, I guess change was inevitable. But don't be frightened. Change can be good, despite our mutual experience that it often isn't.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess, speaking of questions, I guess you've got a battery of them.
Yeah. The first thing I wanted to talk about today is an up-and-coming organization known as the Counter-Revolution.
Oh.
TCR. What do you think of this organization, Charles? And could you tell us a little bit about them?
Well, I could tell you a little bit about them. They're a secret fraternity dedicated to Baal. No, none of that's true. No, actually, as you might guess from the name, the Counter-Revolution, they oppose revolution. Specifically, the great revolution that has engulfed the West since the Reformation, the French Revolution, and so on. And that has swept us so far from reality, from sanity. They're all young people, literally, from, I think, 18 to 25 or 16 to 25, and they're kids, which is wonderful. You know, you can convince as many old codgers like me of something. That's nice, and maybe for the next 15 or 20 years that we're useful members of society, it'll matter what we think. But these are the people who are going to determine, to a great degree, the course that our nation and Western society in general takes toward into the next few decades. And from what exchanges I've had with them, they don't seem like the kind who need to go into safe spaces when they get worried or upset.
Not at all.
In fact, I really cannot imagine what a TCR safe space would look like. Probably no chocolate milk, no puppies, no videos of puppies. They don't have live ones because of the health laws in universities. So, no, actually, all joking aside, I'm very happy that such a group exists, and the people of it that I've had contact with have been very impressed by it. And as you may know, it's not easy to impress me.
It's true.
So, what can I say except that I wish them a great deal of luck, and they certainly have my endorsement.
Yeah, I've also had the pleasure of talking to several of the leaders of this organization, and I can say that they are of the highest caliber. Braden Plyler, the marshal of the organization, in my opinion, is a natural-born leader, and he's very gifted. I think he's assembled a group of young gentlemen who go out into the world and they get things done. And I think this is one organization why I'm so hopeful about the future. You, in a previous episode, you mentioned what you thought of the younger generation, and one of the things you said is they have good instincts.
Yeah.
This group confirms what you said.
Well, I think you're right, and the truth of the matter is too, my generation has really run out of ideas, and I'm not speaking as an anointed spokesman for my generation, but the truth is, and just to be clear, I'm speaking really for the younger boomers. The older boomers are the people in charge, and they can speak for themselves. Their actions speak far louder than my words ever could. But my generation of people came along in the wake of the great destruction of the 60s. I was born the day Kennedy was elected in 1960. So my earliest memories are seeing everything going to pieces. The mass, society, I remember the Watts riots, I remember the 68 riots. This was all, and a lot of other things, much nicer things, the moon landing.
Yeah.
I can get really nostalgic this time. It's easy for me to do that, but I won't. But the point I am making is that as parents, we were pretty bad. I think it's fair to say. Not everyone, but by and large. And we had very little to pass on, and we didn't. So, nevertheless, truth will out. And regardless of how much you try to hide truth, it will reappear and people will pick up on it. You can declare war on reality, but reality will win sooner or later. And so the emergence of these sorts of kids is, to my way of thinking anyway, a good confirmation of it. What will come of it, of course, one doesn't know. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have my crystal ball or my tarot cards with me. But I will say that without the attempt being made, nothing good will come. If you shoot for the stars, you may reach the horizon. If you shoot for the horizon, you'll only hit the mud. And that's the nature of life. So I applaud these guys, and I'm really happy that in the wasteland that is modern life, I'm very happy that they've come along to shed a little light in it.
Yeah, I just want to say one other thing. There's a lot of cynics out there that, we've talked about the whole LARPing thing, and these cynics are going to say, oh, this is just a group for LARPers.
Sure.
I think that is a huge injustice. I mean, right now, this whole movement is just a little sapling. Just a little sapling. It takes time to grow into a big tree and bear fruit. It takes time.
Well, but also what I've noticed, like a number of these kids were local functionaries in the Trump campaign.
Exactly. That too.
Yeah.
That shows you.
It shows you that they have some experience at actually getting things done.
Exactly.
I mean, I'll be frank. The very few people who have my sort of ideas and are my age, to include myself, are terribly practical about them. I could no more imagine, well, I mean, I did. I wrote a book about it, Star Spangled Crown. But as to how to bring these principles about in a concrete way in this country, I have no more idea than, of how I grow a maple forest. I scatter maple leaves, maybe? I don't know. But what is needed, and maybe this generation, maybe the next, maybe the next, maybe the next, is the right ideas, total and complete devotion to the right ideas, married to practicality. I can't emphasize the importance of that. You've got some people who are really wonderful, not just at working the system, because systems come and go, but working human nature. But tons of people who can do that are terribly cynical and do it for their own ends, and that's it. Then you've got other people who have all the right ideas, but they don't know how to put them into play. A good example was when the Soviet Union fell. In country after country in Eastern Europe, you had some wonderful, wonderful idealists come to power in these countries. But they didn't have the nuts and bolts knowledge of how to make governments work. And so usually they get voted out.
Yeah.
Just because things weren't working. So I think that given the fact that these kids have already acquired a certain amount of political savvy, in a practical way, it speaks well for the possibilities that they present.
Absolutely. Okay, so if you'd like to join TCR, you can apply for membership on their website at www.thecounterrevolution.org. Or, if you want to cut through all that red tape, you can email their international recruiter, Anthony, directly. You can find Anthony's email address and the link for the TCR website in the description for this video. Do you have anything else to say about TCR, Charles?
Be afraid. Be very afraid. No. Actually, there are segments of the population who should be rather afraid. And by that, I mean the people who enjoy what we have now. If you think that this is the best of all possible worlds that we're in right now, maybe not. But I wish them luck, because honestly, ladies and gentlemen, this is a textbook case of being sent like lambs in among the wolves. And the bravery that they will require, and the loyalty, and the adhesion to truth for its own sake that will be required from them if they are to be successful. Ladies and gentlemen, they'll have to be heroes, and nothing less. But that's all I have to say about it.
Okay. Nate has a question for you.
That's nice. So?
I would like to ask about the Scottish hero Sir William Wallace. I've heard that he was a very devout Catholic knight of a very Celtic variety, and not just from Mel Gibson. Why isn't he a saint? Was the Scottish War of Independence not sanctioned by the Pope?
Scots were hey, we Wallace bled. Well, firstly, yes, it was sanctioned by the Pope. But it's important to understand that sainthood and pious Catholic warriorhood are not always the same thing. I would that it were so, but it's not. Nobody saw fit to introduce his cause as yet. It would be, I've got a very good friend of mine, Henry von Blumenthal, whose multiple great uncle, Georg von Blumenthal, was the last Catholic bishop of Brandenburg, fought the Reformation with all his might, and died refusing to give up the old faith. He wasn't martyred, though. Henry, of course, and a lot of other people would like to see him beatified, but before that can happen, the cause has to be introduced. So what would happen is that you'd have to get the local Catholic diocese in whatever part of Scotland he's buried in, to, or maybe London, because he was executed there. Maybe his body's there, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, you would have to get them to introduce a cause. And that would have to show there was a certain amount of veneration for him already as a saint. There's a William Wallace Association, by the way. You can look them up. They're big William Wallace fans. And that would be the place to start. I mean, if you would like to see William Wallace a saint, then you have to start with the way it works. And obviously that organization, which is international and has some money and commemorates him and so forth, might be interested. That you get a group of people together, you approach the relevant diocese, and you try to get them to open the cause. Now again, remember that this is not simply about him being a pious fellow, but they also look for miraculous proofs of his being in heaven. But at any rate, if they'll open a cause for him, then he becomes a servant of God. And then there's a lot that they have to prove after that, his heroic virtue and so on and so forth. And then you have to go through the different ranks, venerable, blessed, and finally saint. This has never been done for Sir William Wallace. He might be a saint, I don't know. We don't know for sure until and unless somebody gets beatified and canonized. My advice to you, if you're interested in it, is contact the William Wallace Association. They're online. I think it's like williamwallace.org or something. And it's been around since the 1920s. I mean, this isn't some fly-by-night thing. But get in touch with them and see if anyone has ever tried to introduce his cause, or if there's been any local veneration of him as a saint, anything like that. They might be interested in pursuing it, and they may have the means to do so. So, that's that.
Rosary Crusader asks, Dear Charles, I would like to know more about the apparitions and visions of St. George appearing to Catholic military soldiers in various places when they are in trouble, such as the Holy Lands to the Knights of Christendom, Georgia, Malta, and so forth. Obviously, skeptics and some scholars will say this is all myths, folktales, legends, and even if something happened, it must have been a hallucination, even a mass hallucination, and so forth. But I would like to know the truth behind these stories. Surely some of these stories must indeed be true. I find him a fascinating saint. God bless.
Well, you've kind of already given me half my answer right there. Yeah, stupid people will say that reality can't happen. Well, they do. There's nothing wrong with being stupid. That's what made our country great. Can we not say things like that, please? Anyway, no, St. George, of course, was a Roman soldier martyred in the 200s by Diocletian. And he has indeed appeared in the skies at various battles. Most recently, apparently, in Lebanon during the Civil War, 1976. As I understand it, this apparition was approved by one of the Melkite dioceses in Lebanon, I think Zala. But it supposedly appeared in the Bekaa Valley, where the Christian militia were fighting the Muslims. But this has happened in several places, as it has with St. Michael the Archangel and with St. James.
They've appeared?
Yeah.
Wow.
St. James appeared at the Battle of Clavijo. St. Michael, I forget the name of the battle now, but it was the Portuguese. And they've appeared several different times, usually against Saracens of various sorts. Muslims.
Oh, okay.
You know, ragheads. No, can we not, please? No? Anyway, I can't take me anywhere, honestly. Honestly. No, but this is typically where these apparitions have taken place. Now, can they be believed? Well, let me see you start a legend.
Yeah.
You know, you have to presume that my favorite is mass hallucination. I mean, how do you get a ton of people to see the same thing that isn't there? That's crazy. The concept of mass hallucination is crazy. The concept of mass hallucination is a mass hallucination in academic circles.
Wow.
Because you have a lot of professors sitting there going, it can't be true, therefore it must be, or something. No, you see, ladies and gentlemen, the basic argument there is that since it's never happened to me, it can't possibly happen to anyone. And that is a pretty stupid line of reasoning. So, I would say the burden of proof is on the accuser. And until they can come up with some real evidence that these things have not happened and cannot happen, then we have to suppose that they did, if there are enough people who claim they saw it. It's like the miracle of the sun at Fatima. You know?
Yeah.
I understand it may not make you comfortable, you lay awake at night wondering why you're not a good person, whatever the case. And I'm sorry if it upsets your academic decor, but
I mean, wasn't that even in like the newspaper or something?
it sure was.
I mean,
Then thousands of people were there, and then the thing came toward the earth, the wet ground dried out. I mean, you know, it's like with the Shroud of Turin. If you accept the debunking, which has itself been debunked, you have to presume that there was this medieval charlatan who had somehow harnessed nuclear energy for artistic purposes. He had a collection of first century pollen grains from Palestine to stick into the cloth. He knew all about negative photography. He had a supply of AB blood to smear on the thing. I mean, it just, okay, sure. My one question is why this incredible medieval master never did anything else. Just this one lousy thing. And it stretches the imagination. I mean, it's a little bit like mitochondrial Eve and mitochondrial Adam. When these were discovered, you know, initially the discovery that all of our female chromosomes descend from a single female ancestress. Well, this was run in Scientific American, but 2/3 of the article were dedicated to saying that, oh, well, this isn't the biblical Eve, and, you know, we don't necessarily have a single male ancestor.
Of course.
It's just going on and on and on and on and on, because the simple explanation is reprehensible. So then technology gets a bit better, and they're able to trace the male chromosomes. Oh, my golly, what do they find? They all descend from a single male ancestor. Oh, well, this doesn't mean they knew each other. Okay, Doc. Great. I appreciate how upsetting these discoveries can be. But why don't you withhold judgment, Doctor, until... Just withhold judgment. Leave it at that. If you're a scientist, you shouldn't be getting upset over changes in your worldview forced by new evidence. That's supposed to be what you're about and stuff. So too with scholarship in general. To say that something cannot happen is to admit from the beginning that you're dishonest. If you're a scientist of any kind, or if you're a scholar of any kind, to say that something is absolutely impossible is to admit your dishonesty. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
I'm sick of this lie that Catholics hate science. Oh, the church, you know. We like science, we just like good science.
Yeah. We like science that doesn't start out with a conclusion.
Yeah.
And then runs all around the Houlihan's barn trying to disprove any other possibility.
That's right.
I mean, it's like my favorite, you know, cracking open those tyrannosaur bones and finding the organic goo. This was very upsetting. I thought it was great, and I've had people who have spoken to about it get very upset with me and say, "What do you think it means?" I have no idea. It's not my field. You know, either the dinosaurs lived more recently than we thought, or organic matter lasts a lot longer than we thought. Either way, you're wrong about something. But I don't have to have an explanation for it. I don't know what it means. You know, I know it means fossilization isn't what we think it is. But as far as anything beyond that, I don't know. And I wouldn't even presume to try to come up with another alternative. All I know is yours is wrong. I don't have one to give you in return.
Sadistic.
What? I'm here to help.
Okay, Joshua Hernandez writes, Dear Mr. Coulombe, I have come across accounts which claim that George Washington called for a Catholic priest on his deathbed and was received into the church moments before his death. Are these merely pious legends that came about at a later date, or do they have any basis in contemporary historical accounts of the time? If so, how likely is it that these accounts are true, and what exactly would have brought about this wholly unexpected conversion? Did Washington manifest any signs of Catholic belief or sympathy during his life, which may have foreshadowed this 11th hour reception into the bosom of the Church?
Well, let's answer in reverse. Yeah, there's some signs that he had an interest in Catholicism. He had a picture or two of the Blessed Virgin Mary at Mount Vernon, which was very unusual for someone of his time and place.
Wow, yeah.
The story of his conversion comes to us from Jesuits. And apparently in the annals of the Maryland province of the House of the Society of Jesus, Father Neil is recorded as having been rowed across the Potomac from their house in Maryland to Mount Vernon. And as he put it, I received the great man. And that's dated the day of Washington's death.
Wow.
And then the story goes that the slaves on the plantation were keening and wailing and mourning that the Scarlet Woman had gotten her hands on Master George. So yeah, I think it's quite likely. Is what this would mean. I know that people of an Americanist tinge have often used this as proof somehow that the American Revolution was really something Catholic and so on and so forth. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Adam Weishaupt, who was the founder of the Illuminati, came into the church on his deathbed. The great New York criminal and mafioso Dutch Schultz came into the church on his deathbed. Coming into the church does not baptize everything you've done.
But I will hearken back to one of the episodes where you said that George Washington was the president who most greatly embodied Catholic principles.
In a lot of ways, and it was also, like, one of the things he did when he first took over the Continental Army was he abolished Guy Fawkes Day.
Ooh.
Pope Night. But see, he was also an extremely, devout isn't the word, active Freemason.
Oh, okay.
He was, of course, a very active, and again, devout may not be the word for it, Episcopalian. On the one hand, that was his stated religion, and he served on various Episcopal vestries and boards of different parishes and so on. But by the same token, at least according to the tour guide at the George Washington Masonic Museum in Alexandria, he was never known to receive communion. And that could be, of course, because he was never confirmed in the Episcopal Church, since there was no Anglican bishop here before the Revolution. The other thing too is that and in their rules in those days, you had, just like with us then, you had to be confirmed before you could receive communion. And that was the case with us until the time of St. Pius X.
Wait, confirmed before received communion?
Mm-hmm.
I received first communion before I was confirmed.
Because since St. Pius X, that's been our practice. That's why they call him the Pope of Holy Communion.
Oh, okay.
But because of the lack of grounding in the faith that the modern world has produced, a number of dioceses in this country are going back to the former manner of doing things, which is you get confirmed first and then receive communion.
Oh, I see. So it depends on the diocese. I'm sorry. I know one catechumen where this is an issue. There's an actual question.
Oh yeah.
Do I get confirmed or do I receive the?
This is a real issue that's going on right now.
Okay.
And the thing to bear in mind is that before St. Pius X, you got baptized, then you would be confirmed at some point, and then you would receive Holy Communion, and that was the order.
Yeah.
With the Eastern rites, you get all three when you're born. Baptism, confirmation, first communion. So
Okay.
it doesn't apply to them. But that's how it was done with us. St. Pius X changed it to what was the norm up until everywhere up until about 5 or 10 years ago.
I see.
But as we know, an awful lot of Catholics, for various reasons, don't really believe in the real presence.
Yeah.
A lot of that having to do with very faulty catechesis. So the idea is that since presumably you get better catechesis as part of your confirmation program, it's best to hold off until you've been confirmed. But those dioceses that are doing that are confirming at an earlier age.
Ah.
So you wouldn't get, you'd get confirmed maybe at 8 and receive your first communion perhaps at 9.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, but it varies from place to place, and most places have not made the change yet.
Okay.
Anyway,
Yeah. Sorry for sidetracking.
no, that's all right. So at any rate, with Washington, so the same docent at the museum informed me that wonderful picture you may have seen of George Washington kneeling in prayer at Valley Forge.
Wow.
Oh, this is an image that was big in my youth.
Oh, okay.
See, we had the religion of the country. You guys didn't have nothing. We knew how to worship our nation. Render divine honors to the emperor. We knew how to do that. Anyway, wait a minute. Disregard. Anyway, so you would see these wonderful pictures, sometimes in stained glass, by the way. I've seen them in churches, of George Washington kneeling in prayer at Valley Forge. According to the docent at the museum, that never happened. The scene is totally fabricated. He said it's right up there with George Washington chopping down the cherry tree.
Ah.
Yeah, indeed. So, I mean, as might be expected, the father of our country has been the source of a great deal of myth and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, this particular tale of his conversion I believe to be true. But I also believe that doesn't really have any effect on the nature of the American Revolution itself.
At least we can feel better about it, I guess, right?
I don't know.
Or at least better about George Washington.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I hope it's true. I hope he saved his soul. I mean, he was a very remarkable person. You must understand that as a French Canadian, I've got a little bit of animus toward him because he started the French-Indian War.
Ah, yeah.
Which morphed into the 7 Years' War, which resulted in Canada being conquered by the English. So, I don't know how I feel.
Okay.
It's like rosé, you know, the wine for the non-committal. It's not red, it's not one. Never mind, go on.
Okay. Mark Murphy wants to know, what's your opinion on the U.S. Constitution? Do you think it's beneficial? Is it outdated? Does it need changing? Does it make any difference?
Wow.
Great question, by the way.
It is. Okay, well, first, we have to ask ourselves, what is the Constitution? It is not Holy Writ. It was not actually brought to the Convention Hall in Philadelphia by the Holy Ghost, you know, carrying its beak.
Wow.
Some people really think that it's holy. I mean, a man older than myself told my nephew Albert, with a straight face, he believed what he was saying, that an angel had been present at the...
Visibly?
I don't know about visibly, but he said it had been present. Now, of course, their guardian angels
yeah,
were
technically
present,
that could be true.
That could be true, yeah. But, I mean, you know, that being the case, we've got two angels present here.
Yeah.
And that doesn't improve the quality of the broadcast
Exactly.
this much. So, anyway... but let's deal with each of these questions one by one.
Oh, okay.
What's the first one again?
Well, the first one was just your opinion.
My opinion of the Constitution. Well, it exists.
Okay, good.
All right, there's more to it than that. It exists. As I've said, it's not Holy Writ. You know, my politics is all my religion, and where the Constitution, presuming that it does, if it does, where it does, if it does, may differ from my faith, then my faith with me will always take the first.
Yeah, naturally.
Well, you say naturally.
Oh, well,
but
sorry.
The 4 generations of Catholic politicians ever since JFK
That's
would
true.
make it differ.
That's very true.
So, So that's how I feel about that. What's next?
Do you think it's beneficial?
Well, it has been. I mean, certainly at different times, it's provided protections to the faith that didn't exist here before it was adopted. I could almost say about it what was said about Vatican II. It's good and it wasn't new. It's new and it wasn't good. Because, of course, it does embody some of the best notions of 18th century statecraft. It's ironic. I think that if you had a king with the powers given the president in the Constitution, precisely because he was a king, he wouldn't be allowed to go beyond them. Whereas our president goes way beyond the powers given him in the Constitution.
Yeah.
To the point of being able to make war without Congress.
Well, wasn't that the case basically since Vietnam? I heard we
Yeah,
don't
or
declare
Korea.
war anymore. Yeah.
Since Korea, we don't declare war anymore.
Yeah.
Which is completely unconstitutional. So, and this is what I'm saying. Because we elect him, so he's one of us. Oh boy, we'll let him do anything. Whereas if we had a king, an hereditary monarch, with the same powers specified, he wouldn't get away with 1 inch beyond those powers. But at any rate, the question is, has it been beneficial? Yeah, on the whole, until the Supreme Court borrowed the magic spectacles given by Joseph Smith, to Joseph Smith by the angel Moron.
Moronai.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I said. Anyway, when they borrowed the magic spectacles, they were able to see that the Founding Fathers had put in abortion and gay marriage and contraception, which were not visible to the naked eye before. But then magic spectacles, you can see all kinds of things. It's like the altar girls in the documents of Vatican II.
All right. Is it outdated?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a hard question to answer. And the reason is that you almost have to say which Constitution. In other words, there is the Constitution that I was born under, wherein abortion, contraception, gay marriage, transgender, everything, was not even an issue. It just wasn't there.
Right.
Now, of course, as I say, with the magic spectacles and the angel moron, the Supreme Court were able to discover them. All right. But an earlier generation than mine would say that FDR destroyed the Constitution with the New Deal and all that. An earlier generation would say that Woodrow Wilson did it with the changing the Constitution of the Senate and bringing in the Federal Reserve Bank and so on. Another generation would say it was Abe Lincoln, who destroyed the sovereignty of the states and imposed income tax and suspended habeas corpus. Orestes Bronson said in the 1840s that the Constitution was a dead letter. Maybe it was George Washington himself when he appointed a cabinet. There's no warrant for a cabinet in the Constitution.
Okay.
No warrant for it at all. Or maybe Jefferson when he bought the Louisiana Purchase. Nothing in the Constitution gave him that power. Or for that matter, the power to put on an embargo against the whole world, which he did. That, was Jefferson's response to the Napoleonic Wars on the high seas, to cut off trade with everybody.
Wow.
That'll show him. It didn't work very well.
Yeah.
But he was not an economist.
Yeah.
He had other skills, but not that one. Anyway, I mention all this because you'd have to decide which Constitution it was that might be outdated. Now, then again, you might take the point of view of many of their high mightinesses of the Supreme Court, that if you have the right magic spectacles, it can never be outdated because you can always read into it any old thing you want to. How could something be outdated when you can change it just by, your mind powers?
Well, I mean, couldn't you just call it an organic, living, breathing document?
You can call it that, which is legalese for being the Spacing Guild in Dune, able to change reality with their minds. Ooh. The fetus was a human being, and now it's not. Marriage was between a man and a woman, and now it's not. We are the Guild. We know all. That's why I thought Bush's big mistake after 9/11 was going to war to try to get Osama.
Really? What? Why?
Well, he should just have the Supreme Court slap an injunction on it.
On Osama?
Yeah, that would have been the end of it. Because they could change reality with their minds. See? All that they would have to do is impose their little wills on his, and that would have been the end of the war. To think otherwise is to suppose that there's an objective reality that the judiciary cannot change with their mind powers. And that, sir, is un-American and an attack on our Constitution. Top that one, Bunky.
Does the Constitution make any difference?
Sure.
I mean, it seems like everybody's plaything. How does it make a difference?
Well, it gives them something to play with. See?
Okay.
No, I mean, it makes a difference in the sense that here and there, now and then, you can appeal to it for this or that. And every now and then your appeal will be upheld. But honestly, I mean, from what I can tell, and I'm not a constitutional scholar, you understand I'm an amateur at this, ladies and gentlemen. But from what I can tell, my reading of the Federalist gives me the strong implication that the Founding Fathers intended, and we know that doesn't matter, but they intended that the, not the Supreme Court, but the Senate, then appointed by the state governments, were to have the power of constitutional review. Now think about that for a second. Remember the theory. The Constitution is a contract between the sovereign states, creating an entity to act on their behalf called the federal government. The Senate, which was appointed by those same state governments, was to act as their instrument in maintaining an even keel within the federal system. And that's why it made perfect sense for that body to have constitutional review. But Marbury versus Madison, Mr. Chief Justice Marshall, arrogated to the Supreme Court that power, and it has sat there ever since, although there's no warrant for it in the Constitution itself. You will find the Supreme Court not given any such power in the letter of the Constitution. So, it's not an easy answer in the sense of a clean, safe one.
Mm-hmm.
But suffice to say, the Constitution has had some good use out of it. It's been put to a lot of bad use, but it's only a document. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and I hate to say this, every country is a country of men, not laws. You've heard it said, a country of laws, not men. The problem is that laws, so-called, are paper. Give me good and virtuous men, and I will give you good laws. Give me good and virtuous men to administer those laws, and I will give you good laws. Give me Al Capone and his gang, and I'll give you Chicago in the 20s. So, that's where we're at. Does it make a difference? Sure. But it all depends upon who's making that difference. When the Supreme Court ruled in 1896, was it, or 1890, Trinity versus the United States, that these United States are a Christian country, whatever that may mean, they were expressing the commonly held view, not only of most people, but oddly enough, most members of the country's dominant classes, most of whom consider themselves to be Christian in some sense. Mm-hmm. And they adduced all sorts of reasons for this. It's worth reading the decisions online. Trinity versus the United States. Really, really worth reading. But, you know, now the Supreme Court says we're not a Christian country.
In a ruling?
No, I don't think it's ever been that explicit. but they've interpreted the First Amendment that Congress not establish a religion as a state church.
I'm going to name drop one of our authors, Solange Hertz. In her book, she cites George Washington in the Treaty of Tripoli, saying that the United States is in no way founded on Christian principles.
Yeah, that's exactly what it says. But that's not in the Constitution. And that's not a judicial decision.
Okay.
And that was also done before his deathbed, incidentally.
Yeah, of course.
Just so you know.
Of course.
But the thing that is important to bear in mind here is that it's all fluid. It's all dependent upon the will of whomever's running the show. So today we make a big deal. For instance, one of the rulings that came out in the past few years. What about the Pledge of Allegiance? What about In God We Trust? What about all these vague references to religion that are part and parcel of American ceremonial life? And these were found to be okay because they amount to what the lady in charge, the female justice who wrote the decision said. These amount to civic deism.
Oh, wow.
By the which she meant they don't mean anything.
Wow.
They're just meaningless things that we go through. They're meaningless rituals. So that, okay. All right, so they're meaningless rituals.
Oh my goodness.
So like, so help me God, when you're swearing.
Right.
So it's all meaningless. It's all drivel. If I'm to take her at her word. But who do you take at their word? Because it's all fluid. It's all dependent upon the consensus of the dominant set.
Who said civic deism? What justice said
Oh
that?
gosh, I don't remember her name.
Oh, it
if
wasn't
I had my
recent?
phone, it's in the past 20 years.
Okay.
If I had my phone with me, I would look it up immediately, but
That's okay.
I left it at home. However, just so you'll know, there are a lot of things like this in our constitutional history. I mean, in 1993, I guess it was, a case in Atlanta, the Supreme Court found that a state could keep sodomy illegal. 10 years later, they reversed themselves. And now sodomy is the religion of the land, so to speak. I mean, and all of this within the context of the Constitution.
Right.
What lens, other than the angel morons magic spectacles, what lens are you reading the Constitution through? We know, since the borking of Judge Bork, that it's not original intent of the founders. We know, since Mr. Justice, Willikers, is a good guy, the black Catholic on the court.
Clarence Thomas.
Thank you. Since Mr. Justice Clarence Thomas was forced to swear that he didn't believe in natural law, we know that natural law isn't part of it. Since Mr. Justice Anthony Kennedy wrote, I forget the name of the decision, but it was the one that banned execution of juvenile murderers. In his decision, he cited not the Constitution, not the law of the land, but changes in popular opinion, which the last time I checked was the province of elected people, not whatever they are, and secondly, foreign law.
What?
Yes. So if that's the case, shouldn't we be able to chop off people's hands for shoplifting and execute them for blasphemy? I mean, what he was basically saying was, it's whatever I feel like. So basically, what is it based on? Whatever strong opinions they happen to have. Which means that we should no longer require any legal background of our Supreme Court justices. They should just be people with strong opinions that they want to impose. That's all you need, is to have a strong opinion, a big mouth, and, well, I mean, I could be on the court. I've got both, strong opinions and a big mouth. The difference is, however, that I do not share the consensus of the dominant elites, and that would disqualify me. But if I did, I have no legal background, but I don't need any. All you need is a strong opinion and acting as the voice of your masters.
Wow, I'm at a loss for words for some of the things that you just...
Why?
No, I mean, some of the things these justices have said, I just...
Why? They run the show and you do as you're told, warm boy. What's wrong with that? Don't you remember how Oscar Wilde defined democracy?
How?
The
No.
bludgeoning of the people, by the people, for the people.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh man, he's so witty.
Yeah, well, that's what he was known for. When he was dying, his bedroom had this horrendous wallpaper, and he said either the wallpaper goes or I do.
Wow, that's great.
So, what else you got for me?
Okay, for our last question, Anthony wants to know, what are your thoughts on the American Solidarity Party?
Ah, well, ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you a secret. I'm going to reveal who I voted for in 2016, the presidential election that defeated Aunt Hillary and brought us Uncle Donald. This is not something I've shared with many people, but I'm going to tell you. I voted for Matt Maturin, who was in fact the candidate of the American Solidarity Party.
Wow,
Yep.
must be pretty good then.
It's all right. I mean, given well, you see, this came to us through my brother and myself. I have to explain something. My brother and myself, years ago, would sit down with our father. Once all three of us, once my brother and myself were both of voting age. Every election, we would sit down, the three of us, around the kitchen table, and decide who we were going to vote for, as a block.
Wow, okay.
Because we didn't want to cancel out each other's votes.
Oh, okay, yeah. Wow.
So we would sit down and we would discuss these things in great detail. And sometimes in those pre-computer days, when you had very little to go on with some of the lesser offices, it would just be a matter of voting against whomever the LA Times was endorsing. Well, you had no way of knowing anything about these people. If it's the LA Times, you know it's bad.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we left the Republican Party.
When?
No, 1980. It was after Reagan's second term. So it was in the early 90s. What did it for me was the nomination of Ed Shao as a senatorial candidate here in California, because he was a pro-abortion Republican.
Oh, okay.
He was running against Alan Cranston, who couldn't have been more pro-abortion. I mean, if anything, Alan Cranston was an argument in favor of general abortion. Kill them all. If they're going to grow up to be like Alan Cranston, just abort everybody. But seriously, so that was what the Republicans, presented us with. And you got to understand something. On my dad's side, I'm a New England French Canadian. And we were tribally Republican the way the New England Democrats, the New England Irish, were tribally Democrat. For the same reason, because the Irish were Democrats, so we were Republican. Get it? Didn't like the Irish. Anyway, which, by the way, I am part Irish. It's okay. I don't hate you guys. I don't think much of your Taoiseach, but that's me. Anyway, so the Republicans have presented us with a moral dilemma. We could not vote Republican in that election.
Was that for the state senatorial seat?
No, it's the federal Senate.
Federal Senate, okay.
And so, for the first time in my life, I voted American Independent Party. So, Shao lost by almost exactly the number of people that voted third party.
Oh, no.
And I hoped that the Republicans would kind of pick up on this.
Yeah.
But as my late father used to say, we have two parties in this country, the evil party and the stupid party. And the Republicans, of course, have the honor of being the stupid party.
Mm-hmm.
So that did not work. And then the next time there was an election for a nomination for Senate, up comes Tom Campbell, who was a congressman. and who boasted of being pro-choice and the most fiscally conservative, blah, 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 blah. And I heard that, I said, okay, you're for greed. That's great. So when Tom Campbell came on, I registered, and the rest of us registered American Independent. Now, you got to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that as things currently stand, the difference between major parties and minor parties is that with the major parties, it's a question of who's the less evil. With the minor parties, it's who's the less insane. So
That's right. That's a new phenomenon that's happening. That is, that people are talking about now.
Well,
it's not, you don't vote for a candidate, you vote against a candidate.
Against a candidate, and include me out.
Yeah.
And if you're going to say, "Oh, you're wasting your vote," I'm wasting my vote anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if either alternative you're giving me, I'm against. How am I not wasting my vote voting for either of them? Or, as the very prophetic comedian Pat Paulson, when he ran for president in 1968, put it, people ask me, why should I waste my vote on you? I say, don't waste your vote on me, waste it on one of the other guys. So, so that being the case, we went third party, and have been happily third party ever since. Voting American Independent, I was able to vote against Obama in favor of the real black guy, Alan Keyes.
That's right.
And that was the first time I ever got to vote for a Catholic for president, just so you know. Yeah.
Did Alan Keyes run with Pat Buchanan? Did you choose Alan Keyes over Pat Buchanan?
I think I did, yeah.
That's interesting.
Oh, well. Although, I don't think Pat was in the race.
Oh, he wasn't? Okay.
No. There was some other thing. I mean, Pat wasn't in the race. Anyway, so this time around, what should happen? But that we think, okay, the primaries are coming up. Let's see what kind of wild folk we got running for the American Independent Party this time.
Yeah.
Well, there was a Chinese lady who felt that she had to run for president in order to share the revelations that Jesus was giving her. There was a Protestant Latino hip-hop artist. There was an ex-surfer who was promising to return to the 60s. That was very, very appealing. But in the end, we settled for the one guy who was typically American Independent Party as we had known it. Strict constitutionalist, pro-life, blah, 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 all the usual stuff that'll never get anywhere.
Right.
All right. We voted for him. He came in dead last. It was the hip-hop artist that won. But he only won the primary. At the convention, the party voted to endorse Trump. Well, if we wanted to vote for Trump, we'd be Republicans. So, what did we do? Now they can be told. My brother and myself went on a search for a political home. And believe me, it was like the Holy Family going through Bethlehem. Oh man, we couldn't be libertarian because of the abortion thing.
Right.
We couldn't be peace and freedom just because of the ick factor. What do you do? So we found the Constitution Party, which we'd heard of before. Again, pro-life, strict construction, blah, blah, blah. That's great. So we re-register Constitutional Party. But guess what we find out? They had not gotten enough signatures, so they had to be on the ballot in California. So what was our last resort? We looked at the list of write-in candidates, or permitted write-in candidates.
Yeah.
There we found Mr. Maturin and the American Solidarity Party. So, what did the American Solidarity Party stand for? It stands for the application of Catholic social principles to American political life, which is a very good thing. But in this sense, of course, you always have to ask yourself, and how do they mean that? Do they mean imposing the kingship of Christ? No. But in this case, it does mean the application of the principles of the Compendium of the Social Teachings of the Church, issued in the past 10 years by the Holy See, and the social recommendations of the National Conference of Catholic Bishops. Now, did we agree with everything the party stood for? No. The immigration thing, is an extremely vexed issue. And the party accepts the bishop's endorsement of unlimited immigration. But for us, it wasn't that big a deal because, as you may have heard me say in this space before, neither side is honest about immigration. And as long as that's the case, I'm not going to worry about it one way or the other. They're all lying, so who cares? That being said, other than that one question, everything in what the American Solidarity Party was pushing, we were all for.
Yeah, I just read the platform last night. I thought it was pretty impressive, to be honest.
It is very impressive. And so this was the second time I voted in a presidential election and not held my nose. And that's a pretty good thing. So that's how I feel about them. I mean, as things stand, I'm not a member of the party yet. I don't think we were registered from the Constitution Party. But I certainly voted for you guys, and if any of you are listening, and if I were currently looking for a party home, that is where I would go.
Good.
The American Solidarity Party, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first.
Okay, that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed listening to Charles, remember to subscribe to the Tumblr House YouTube channel. If you'd like to ask Charles a question, you can do so through the YouTube comments or contact us on the Tumblr House website. See you next time.
We can't promise I'll answer you anymore. But, as a consolation prize, anyone whose questions do get answered will have answers to their questions. Well, anyway, good to see you, and once again, ladies and gentlemen, happy anniversary. Bye-bye.